Hello and welcome to ATP Report. I'm Barry Nussbaum. Let's start off with your homework assignment, ATP people out there around the world. Take out your cell phone if you haven't done it yet. Take out a blank text message on your phone and send the message truth, T-R-U-T-H, in the message box and address it to 88202. Push send. You'll be signed up in a heartbeat. You'll be on our mailing list and you'll get all of our content absolutely free. We have a very special guest today. Robert Spencer is with us. As you all know from many appearances on ATP Report, Robert is the founder of Jihad Watch, the author of 23 best-selling books on Islamic jihad, telling the story all the way from the beginning to current events. You should check out his website. Welcome, Robert Spencer.
Good to talk to you, Barry, as always.
Thanks for coming on as usual. Let's start off with your favorite topic. That's in quotes. The Iranian mullahs are nothing if not vindictive. There's a report out now that at least 2 Iranians belonging to the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, the Quds Force, have been plotting to assassinate former National Security Advisor John Bolton. The Justice Department knows about it, has an investigation, but as you point out on your website, there are no indictments. It might be because the Biden administration will do anything to prevent the Iran nuclear deal from not happening. Is it really possible, Robert, that the United States will prioritize a new nuclear deal over everything or anything Iran might do, including assassinating the National Security Advisor?
That does seem to be the case, Barry. They know who these men are who were plotting. They know what they were up to. They were committing offenses that are indeed indictable, and yet no indictments are forthcoming. And it seems clear that above all, the Biden administration does not want to offend the mullahs at a time when they're about to conclude this new deal, which incidentally, the Biden administration has outsourced to a Russian diplomat, Mikhail Ulyanov, who has been in charge of the negotiations for the United States with Iran. And Ulyanov has reported that the Iranians have gotten everything that they wanted and more. He didn't say anything about the deal being good for the United States.
Does that link up to what you know? I heard that a number of top US negotiators walked out and quit. They were so disgusted that the United States wasn't negotiating that we were capitulating.
Yes, 3 negotiators in the Biden administration. And so we have to remember, these are not like MAGA hat wearing Trump supporters. These guys were in the Biden administration. They wanted a nuclear deal with Iran, but they saw that the Biden administration was giving away the house and they couldn't get behind that. So they quit.
If your own people are bailing on you, my gosh, how bad is this deal gonna be? I'm scared to find out, and supposedly we're going to know in a week or 2.
Yes, that's right.
There's a group, Americans for Peace Now. It's one of those peace groups that basically hates the Jewish state. And there was just a webinar where the United States ambassador to Israel, Tom Nidas, made a speech about how there must be a 2-state solution and Israel's in the way and it's not good for the Palestinians. And there's 4 or 5 key issues that he brings up constantly. And his first key issue, this is so silly, the Palestinians need 5G. And if they get 5G that he's been pounding on the table about, there could be peace. Let me ask you a question besides that completely stupid comment. How is it possible that our ambassador would say, you know, the Palestinians aren't perfect either because they pay Palestinians to murder Jews? Now, that's not like a little minor infraction, you know, like speeding or forgetting to mow your lawn when you're in a homeowners association. He considers that a minor problem because the Palestinians pay Palestinians to kill Jews. I don't get how we have gone so insanely into their camp that we think that's hard to figure out a solution to? This ambassador says he's working on a solution. Can't we just tell them, don't kill Jews?
Well, you know something, interestingly enough, the Trump administration told them that and cut the Palestinians off. And the Taylor Force Act was passed that forbade US taxpayer money being given to any entity that funded terrorism, which should have cut the Palestinians off forever. But the Biden administration turned the aid faucet back on and is giving millions and billions of dollars to the Palestinians in defiance of the Taylor Force Act and in open defiance of it, because they actually say, no, 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 see, this is humanitarian aid, so that's okay. But there's no exception in the Taylor Force Act for humanitarian aid. And so they're just completely ignoring the law of the United States in order to fund these jihadis. And then they turn around and say, gee, this is a problem. These guys are paying terrorists. Well, they knew that already. They knew that. They knew that there were provisions to protect the American taxpayer from that, from being involved in that, and they ignored it all. And so it's all on them.
Yeah, very well said, Robert. And we both remember the discussion in the White House where Trump told the Palestinian Authority, stop killing Jews or I'm going to stop giving you money. Mahmoud Abbas promised he would do it, went back to Ramallah and reinstituted the program literally instantly. And as you said, Trump was a man of his word and cut off the money. And now we're paying them in violation of federal law to kill Jews. Now, speaking of where the money's going, I've got a great one for you. And this was off your website. I mean, this is really good stuff you were publishing. The U.S. Central Command General McKenzie has said that Iran's missile force is the greatest threat today to Middle East security. They have an arsenal of long-range ballistic missiles they've been testing for years. So for 7 years, they've been pouring enormous amounts of money into ballistic missile delivery systems. Where'd they get the money, Robert? As you said, from us.
That's right.
We gave them billions from the Iran deal that was supposed to be, this was Obama's speech, remember, invested in humanitarian aid and blah, blah, blah. We literally paid them billions to build missiles to blow us and Israel up. Is this as insane to you as it is to me?
Oh, yeah. And it's worse because the Obama administration also knew that they were going to use the money to fund Hamas and Hezbollah, not to feed their own people. And that's exactly what they did. The jihad terror groups that are clients of the Islamic Republic of Iran got a huge boost in their funding at the time of the Iran nuclear deal. And now, with this new nuclear deal, it looks as if they're going to get $150 billion. And that is, once again, not going to go to the Iranian people. It's going to go to Hamas, to Palestinian Islamic Jihad, to Hezbollah, and also very little known to leftist groups, communist groups around the world, because the Islamic Republic has been discovered in Spain, for example, to be funding them as well as jihad groups. It seems that what they want to do, of course, above all, is destabilize and ultimately destroy the West. And so Marxist parties will do just as well for that. Well,
there's a revolutionary group with a formerly great name and reputation called Amnesty International. The USA director came out with one of the stupidest comments I have ever heard. This guy was speaking, his name is Paul O'Brien in Washington, and he was commenting, Robert, on a 2020 national poll that found 80% of American Jews consider themselves supporters of Israel, 80%. And this nut says, I don't believe that poll. My gut tells me that Jewish people in the United States just want to know there's a sustainable place there, but it shouldn't be a Jewish state. And this guy actually said, Israel shouldn't exist as a Jewish state. I wonder, has Amnesty International ever come out and called for the destruction of a state anywhere in the world? I think the answer is obviously no. And why is it okay for this peace group to advocate for the elimination of a sovereign nation that's our ally?
It's interesting to note that the whole idea of the Palestinians as a people was never known before the 1960s. It was invented by the KGB in collaboration with Yasser Arafat as a rhetorical stick to beat Israel with. And of course, it's been incredibly effective, because before that, Israel was facing 22 hostile Arab states, and it was the tiny David versus this massive Goliath. So they created an even smaller people and then claimed that the rapacious Israeli war machine was oppressing them. Now, that was an idea born in the center of leftism, the Soviet Union. And it is still an idea that is current on the left, that it would be just a matter of social justice to destroy Israel, essentially, and to let the local Arabs overwhelm it demographically, if not militarily. And so this guy's leftism is showing in saying this, that this is something that the Israelis ought to do. Actually, if the Israelis ceased to exist as a Jewish state, there would be a genocide of the Jews, because the Palestinian Arabs would pursue the jihad imperative. And this is something that the Palestinian leaders have made clear many, many times, that not a single Jew would exist in a Palestinian state, and any kind of hybrid state they would ultimately work to take over. Consequently, this guy is essentially calling for a new genocide of the Jews. And that is of a piece with the whole birth of the Palestinian idea in the annals of the far left, in the think tanks of the far left.
Let me pile on, if I might. You point out on your site that Amnesty International tweets have been analyzed over the preceding number of months. They published 132 tweets condemning Israel. And for the entire rest of the world, everywhere there's absolute genocide, slaughter of magnitudes in the millions, just 13 tweets about the rest of the world combined, and 10 times that number just about how horrible Israel is. Is their agenda as obvious to you as it seems to be to me? Like, let's just get rid of the Jews?
Oh, absolutely. And you know, it's the same thing at the UN, where they have a standing article on their agenda, item 7, that is about Palestinian oppression by Israel. There is no other country that comes in for the routine condemnation that Israel does at the UN. And it's very clear why, because the UN's largest voting bloc is the Organization of Islamic Cooperation, 56 Muslim countries plus the Palestinians, and they essentially control what the UN says. So Israel, instead of genuine massive human rights offenders like North Korea, Israel gets the brunt of its criticism. They ignore the real human rights offenders.
Sure makes you miss Nikki Haley, doesn't it, at the UN, standing up for what's right? Wow.
Yeah.
Robert, tell people where they can find out about you and follow your brilliant work, would you please?
Jihadwatch.org is the only site in the world that tracks jihad activity every day. And then there's Jihadwatch RS on Twitter. There's Jihadwatch Facebook group. My books are at Amazon.com, Barnes & Noble, and wherever self-respecting books are sold.
Buy his books, read his writings. You'll learn a lot. Thanks, Robert, for coming on. And all of you out there in ATP land, we sure appreciate you joining us today. Remember, if you didn't do it earlier, take out your cell phone and text the word truth in your message box and address it to 88202. Push send. We'll sign you up for free, and you'll never pay for our content. For ATP Report, I'm Barry Nussbaum.